Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm okay, Hugh. Welcome
Yeah,
back, by the way.
thanks. A lot of people are complaining about the taxation office and how they are really ramping up some of the demands that they're putting out, even though it's pandemic and everything. And so maybe today I might have a few questions about the tax office. A lot of people are scared of the tax office. Is that your general feeling about it?
Yeah, the general public absolutely do feel powerless of government organizations, corporations, and various other institutions. And there is a very simplistic answer as to why that is. That is because all governments, corporate governments, what they call corporatocracy, and the taxation offices, the various other types of corporations like Microsoft, McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, or any one of these companies, what they do is that they hide in a cloud of bureaucracy. They ask you to fill in other words, they get you to perform all manner of stupidity, levels of stupidity, to get you lost into their bureaucracy. And all the time, what they're doing is just simply saying, go to the A door, now find the B door, and then with the B door, unlock the Z door. And when you find the Z door, get your envelope and put your money into the envelope and then take it to the PO box with no name, no nothing, and then drop it into there. And then when you've done that, at the end of the day, we will give you a receipt to say, thank you very much for your contribution. In other words, it's voluntary. And
Voluntary.
they would write all sorts of poetically threatening letters to say that you have to do this, otherwise we're going to take your house away, we're going to take your livelihood away, we're going to take everything away. And it's all done by threats. And once you fall for the threat, what happens is that they walk you into bureaucracies after bureaucracies. And I will talk about the bureaucracies. Why do they use so many ways of eliciting and extracting monies from you? Because it's downright unlawful. And the reasons why
Mm.
they do it, and I'm recapping again, is because they know that there are laws. They know that there are
Oh,
laws. And to bypass these laws, they get you to contract into, or be it put your claims in, make your submission. You, first of all, tell us that you owe us this. And then we'll say,
ah,
how dare you not pay for it? So when they send the letter, they always send it to you in a different name other than the name that you are born under, the name that's in your
okay.
possession. In other words, they're writing to you in a name of which does not belong to you. They created the name,
Mm.
and that could be in all capitals or series of abbreviations, but the first letter will always be in all capitals. Okay, and that means they're talking to a nom-de-guerre person or a
Mm.
corporate entity, but they don't ever tell you that's what that is. You are not a corporate entity. You are not a nom de guerre. You are not a soldier. You're not a dead horse. That's what nom de guerre means, a dead war horse. You are not any of these names. But because people don't pay attention to detail, they read the letter and it's just all cloak and dagger stuff. It's in Shakespearean language, and they get all frightened that these private organizations, these nameless organizations that take no responsibility for anything, is going to take their livelihood away and going to take their house away, put them into prison, and so on and so forth. But the trick is, they first of all write to your doorstep using a different name that doesn't belong to you. That's one. And
Wow.
then when you read the letter, it's got a lot of poetry, what they call Shakespearean language, cloak and dagger material. And when the general public get very frightened, they now begin to do the things that they think the letter is telling them to do. And that's usually to fill out this form, go online here, ask for a form, not they're going to give you a form, ask them for a form. That means you're doing it on your behalf and you are doing it for them, and they're not really asking you anything. The reason why is because Shakespearean language is undefined. And now that they've got you doing something, they walk you through the bureaucracies, and the bureaucracies are there to hide the fact who the men and women are that is actually asking you for this money. Okay, and if you look at the letter, it's always in boxes. Boxes means there's a different game being played in every single box on a document. Like a tennis court, if the ball falls within a particular zone of a box, then it's a different rule for every box. And if it's out of court completely, the ball has gone out of the court, as in the ballpoint pen. If it's out of court, then they can say it's out of court. That's why they say stick within this box, because if you cross over the box, it's a different game, and they haven't told you what games are in each box. But the most important bit is that these bureaucracies is what most human beings are frightened of, because they are nameless and they are faceless, and bureaucracies are there to hide the level of criminality that is taking place right before your eyes. And the fact that it's several 100 million or even several billion people that have been successfully lied to is neither here nor there. What is important is that a lie is a lie. A name that is not yours is not a name that you need to perform for. A letter that is undefined remains an undefined letter. And once they even go through that process and convince the general public through fear and cloak and dagger fear, that's the type of fear that they use, shadow fears, yes, shadow puppets, that is going to loom at you. Once they've done that, at the end of that day, for that private fiscal calendar, which starts on April, okay, that's the private fiscal calendar. So every single house, every single family have their own calendar. The most famous, of course, being the Gregorian calendar, which, of course, starts on 1st of January, okay? The private organizations, and this is very important, the private organizations have a fiscal year calendar that starts on the 1st or the 2nd of April. And that's when their cycle starts. That's their new year. And they renew these contracts year on year, because they're not like rolling contracts. They have to roll it in every year with your permission. And once you've gone through all of those bureaucratic process with the threat of fear, what do they say at the end of that day? Whether it's online or anything else, thank you very much for your contribution. And what is a contribution? It's something that you give up,
donation.
Voluntarily give up.
Okay, Mark, that is so much information, and I guess anyone watching this video, the audience will probably go, wow. I just want to read, for the purpose of my understanding and the audience, the Australian Taxation Office, what they say in Wikipedia, and these are the key words that I want the audience to think about. So, according to Wikipedia, this is what it says. The Australian Taxation Office, or ATO for short, is an Australian statutory agency and the principal revenue collection body for the Australian government. The ATO has responsibility for administering the Australian federal taxation system, the superannuation legislation, and other associated matters. Responsibility for the operation of the ATO are within the portfolio of the Treasurer of Australia and the Treasury.
That's two venues. The Treasurer, the Treasurer, and who else?
The Treasurer of Australia and the Treasury.
So I'm collecting taxes for this pencil, and now I'm collecting taxes for this nail cutter. But I'm going to call this the Treasurer, and I'm going to call this the Treasury. Treasurer, Treasury. Hugh, Mark. As long as it
Okay.
sounds familiar, it's two different jurisdictions. And then, of course, you've got federal. And we, of course, are federal judges. So it appears that they're collecting taxes on our behalf. Well, I think we better go and sue them as to where the money is. Because if they're collecting money for our benefit, the federal government, the federal judges, where is it? Where is it?
Yeah, they're administering the Australian federal taxation systems. It's federal. Yeah. So,
Like in
wow.
Germany, like in the US, like in
Yeah, all
Britain,
federal.
they're federal. All of it is federal.
Wow.
So well, I wonder who is collecting these things and then calling it a contribution. So when you
Wow.
now, I have a lot of insight into how this taxation fraud takes place because
Yes.
the name is all in fraudulent way and the language is all fraudulent and the entire mechanism is done under the cloak and dagger of privacy. You actually don't know who is collecting these things, and that's due to what is a thing called privates. These are privates, and here's a big insight which we have discussed previously that have yet to come on the internet. These private individuals, what they call private persons, are the ones that actually formed and created the existing governments that you see at this moment. These public bodies were actually created by privateers, And the reason why you have so much imageries and so many films and so on and so forth showing you that these privateers are nothing more than drunken, womanizing, cutthroats and things like that, that's incapable of coming together and creating something massive like an Australian government or any other government on this planet, is the way that they've robbed the general public to realize the formation of government organizations, which is a corporatocracy, is nothing more than the bureaucratic processes that these privateers use. Now, whenever I use this word privateers, what are the images that come up in the general public? They see things like Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes.
They see swashbucklers, buccaneers. They see drunken sailors wobbling about in their ships and raping and pillaging small villages. No. These are very highly organized groups. Their sole purpose is to rip off, steal under cloak and dagger of bureaucracies, the general public's sweat equity and commercial energy, because that's what that is. What I have said to you is not spoken about by any single person on this planet. And I have checked this. I have checked it on year. Is there anybody on this planet that's telling people that your governments were formed and created by the privateers? They were created by these characters, the caricatures that the general public have in their head as to what a privateer is. So when they hire people like, what's that famous actor that did Pirates of the Caribbeans?
Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp. So when you see Johnny Depp, who acts as the personification or the figurehead for these private organizations, you only think of him as being a colorful, lovable, buffoon Jack Sparrow character personified by that actor, is nothing more than that. But just like the Burberry pirates, these are highly organized individuals that created these bureaucracies in order to perform piracy day in, day out on the general public. Just as the Federal Reserve Bank all over, just as every central reserve bank and the Bank of International Settlements, as well as all of these banks like the Bank of England, are all private banks, and these private banks are practicing piracy upon the general public with an undisclosed letter, with an undisclosed name, using a fictitious name that they created that comes through your letterbox, using a language that is undefinable, and getting the general public to go through that bureaucracy, not realizing what they're dealing with is a private organization, and then saying, and I repeat it again, I thank you very much for your contribution. I will paraphrase this for you, Hugh. If you don't give me £180,000 in the next 30 days, I'm going to take a lien out on your house. I'm going to question your ability to raise your own children. I am going to tax your car. I'm going to shut your bank account down. I'm going to send you to prison if you don't perform any of these things. And that's all done by threat using the post office, which is a violation itself because that's a poison pen. That's trying to elicit money using the postal service. And after they've done all of that to you and you've given them that money, they say, oh, thank you very much, Mr. Hugh, for your contribution.
What contribution?
When I sued them for the name, the language, okay,
contribution. I don't want to contribute to you.
No, but I want to. I want to contribute, but I want to contribute with my name, so I take credit for it. I want to contribute with a language that has any meaning to it. One word, one meaning per sentence. Each word has a definition or what they call a word closure. When they're confronted with one single element of a person that knows what they're doing, they begin to fold because there are laws. And I will repeat this again and again, ladies and gentlemen, whether it's a mortgage, a so-called debt, whether it's a tax, there are laws. And because there are laws, that is why these governments, which is a corporatocracy, which means it's a McDonald's corporation, and also hiding in the Privacy Act, which means they're private individual people, there are laws. And the reason why they're doing these things is because they know these laws will put them into bloody FEMA camps. That's why they have to go through this level of fraud and then say, thank you for your contribution, because there are laws. We know what these laws are, like in the US, Title 18, 1001.
Okay.
And what they're doing is they're trying to avoid, bypass these laws that keep these things in check.
Okay, Mark, I'm going to ask this question for the audience. You're saying that thank you for your contribution because the word contribution and thanking it is more like a donation.
It's a voluntary system. It's a voluntary compliance.
Correct. The word voluntary was next on my lips. And there is no invoice. There is no bill that they sent. It's just, thank you for your contribution.
They never acknowledge how much has been collected, how much you've given them, who has collected it, on whose bank account did it go to. It only says we're collecting it on the behalf of the Treasury or the Treasurer, that we're collecting it on the behalf of a corporate government. And why do they keep calling you a Mr.? Because a Mr. is a very low rank on a maritime, albeit on a ship. That's what Mr. means. I'll give you an example, Hugh. If you go to the UK website for a driving license, it will say you have to pick a title. I picked the title of a captain because I'm the captain. Okay, and that gives me the job, the option to do that. And then you query it, say, why do you have to tick Mr., Mrs., or any one of these things? They'll simply say to you, well, how else are we going to know whether you're a man or a woman? Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? So Why don't they ask you, when they ask you to tick the box captain, whether you're a woman captain or a man captain? But they don't.
Yes.
Now,
And there's another field you can put gender, like male or female.
this
They
is
don't
what it I'm
need.
saying. When you go
Okay.
all the way at the bottom, they will ask you, oh, what's your gender, by the way? Even though they say to you, it's Mr. is male, Miss is female, they'll ask you, what's your gender?
Oh, it's a red herring, isn't it? It's a red herring.
It's an oxymoron. And the general
Yes.
public has been so badly dumbed down that they are not aware that there is an oxymoron in their life, because they're essentially living oxymoron lives. What's an oxymoron? It's something that makes you moronic. That's what oxymoron is. It's something in your life that makes you a moron. So if you accept the explanation that a Mr. means that it's a man, it's a way of saying man instead of saying male or female, that's a saying it's a man. And then at the bottom, it says, what's your gender? And you've accepted the explanation that it's a man or a woman, and then they ask you for a gender. You've essentially walked yourself into looking like an oxymoron, because only a
Oh,
moron
dear.
would believe such things. And if you can get a moron to believe that, then you can get a moron to make a large gift donation to these people who are nameless and faceless, a contribution, and they can get away
Yeah.
with it. The general public, because of the mental dissonance and because of the Dunning-Kruger effect, which simply means that clever people think they are stupid, and stupid people think they are clever. Either way, they are neither. They are not what they think that they are. And as long as
Yeah.
humanity is in that position, there will always be in a state of oxymoron. Religion being the most absurd thing on this planet. It's the most absurd thing on this planet. And people follow blindly absurdity. So when you have this level of oxymorons in one's life, how easy is it for a person that has access to a chartered psychologist or a psychiatrist that knows about neurological pathways on how these things work, for them to come up with a bureaucracy to walk and talk human beings into giving up, like 500,000, 2 million, 3 million, being frightened to death, putting them into prison, all because it was the general public that first of all asked for the documents, wrote back on behalf and taking responsibility for a name that doesn't belong to them. Well, one of the things that you can do is simply say, well, this name is copyrighted to me, so have you got a copyright release? We know what we're doing because we deal with these things on a daily basis. Yeah,
That's right.
as long as the general public has understood that it's a private organization that have essentially lied to you, and they don't even know what private means. The general public is so dumbed down, and there's no fault in that. Yeah, it's done through programming, through television lying, politicians lying, consecutively, day on day, week after week, minute by minute, second by second, and through the education and through the religious systems that they are able to do this. Privateers also created the religions that people worship. Now, we can say these things because we got access to these documents. We have access to the names and the bank accounts of these individuals who call themselves gods. People are not aware that these very large empires exist in what's known as in the private sector, in the private zone. Human beings are not even aware that the private armies in this world outnumber the public armies. They're not even aware of that. And they're not even aware that the armaments and the weaponries that these private groups have usually is 3.5 times greater than those ones that are given to the ordinary soldiers that you and I have come to associate country defenses of countries with.
Wow.
The taxation system is nothing more than privateers levying contributions from the general public because it's the privateers that are issuing these banknotes. These banknotes are notes of a private organization called the Bank of England, which is private, and the Federal Reserve Bank in the US and every country in the world, including Zimbabwe, which is a Federal Reserve Bank.
Okay, Mark, this is a lot of information. Let me really juice this, what you've said. You're saying that the tax office all around the world is just an agency created by a private tier or private person somewhere in the past, and it's different for each country, but in Australia it's 1910, say.
Yes, but these contracts have to be renewed every year under the
every
fiscal
year.
Yeah.
And then they are really a debt collection agency.
No, they're not even that. They're not even that. No, they're not even that. They are nothing more than people that take contributions from door to door using the mailbox.
What?
Yes. They don't.
Because they say it's a statutory.
It's only because it only becomes statutory once you have taken possession of a name that they have given you, which don't belong to you, because that's why they don't ever write to you in your correct name.
It becomes listen, folks. It just what Marcus said there is like jewel. It only becomes statutory if you volunteer to be that name.
Once you take up their persona, once you take up their corporate instrument and saying, look, I will accept your name because that allows me to do all sorts of manner of different things on commercial enterprise. And because I've accepted it, I now need to make a contribution to you. And they use those methods to be able to sound like that if it's actually a law. A law can only be established once you have given consent and both parties consent to that.
And boy, the government, the bureaucracies have a lot, they give them a lot of power, and they go through just as if it's some sort of, above whatever law that they go through, like whether it's collections or liens, commercial liens.
But that only takes place if you actually accept the name.
Of course. Only when you accept the name. Otherwise, they're just nothing more than door to door, like you would say. Well, what's the thing you say? Door to door collecting.
Door to door collecting for contributions. We all know the characteristics of psychopaths and narcissists, that these people are actually known as the people of the lie. When you are dealing with the people of the lie, you have to ask yourself, and every politician is a liar, every lawyer is a liar, every solicitor is a liar, every judge is a liar. As David Wayne Miller said, if his lips are moving, they're lying to you. Now, the question for the general public that I need to ask is, how many lies does a liar need to lie about to cover up his lies or her lies?
All the time?
All the time. All the time. And their dear God hope is that they don't get caught out on a lie, because you can only lie to so many of the people so many of the time. You can only lie so many times to so many of the people at any given point in time. Abraham Lincoln. But if you lie to all the people all the time, then of course you get caught out. And that's what's been happening globally. These governments and these privateers know that we are coming for them. They think that they can hide just like a liar within a lie. I mean, just in the 2 years that we've known each other, or 3 years, how many liars have you come across to destroy what the Federal Postal Court systems is, or destroy the organizations that I've created? How many lies did they tell to cover up their lies?
It's more than 10.
More than 10 people that you have known that have told 50, 60,000 lies to cover up that they are lying, cheating criminals. And that's what these people are. And the governments around the world know that the general public have cordoned on to who and what they are. They have yet to figure out what the privateers mean. That's why we've done so many of these interviews, to say, when you are making a contribution, ladies and gentlemen, you have to contribute in your correct name. You have to contribute in a correct language that we have. And you have to be in a position where you are asking questions as to where these contributions are going to. If they don't do this, if they are not willing to do this, then of course they don't want to know what the next stage is, because human beings are so frightened that they would make that contribution and keep themselves into that comfortable hole, into that comfortable cave, until the boogeyman comes again on the end of their fiscal year, which is on April. And every human being is frightened and terrified of ever asking these privateers, "Hey, you buccaneer, what is this? What is this name? What is this language? Are you hiding under Privacy Act because I can disqualify the privacy? You better tell me your name, boy. You better tell me, because I'm coming for you. Because what you are doing is 100% criminal. And you have murdered, raped, and pillaged using these things, these mechanisms, to be able to make your private wars against your private oppositions, against one privateer to another. You got the general public funding your goddamn private wars. And damned you are, because you've used the post office and because you put it on the paper. The Federal Postal Court judges are coming for you. And I don't care how little you are or how big you are going to a FEMA camp, because we've got the evidence, we've got the paper trail, and we have got the correctness to do what we do. They are going to the FEMA camps.
Wow. I just got to add that, your comment about where the money is going and the contribution, and they're thanking you for it. Well, the Australian Taxation Office, they put in like a general graph to say, oh, so much of your percentage of your tax is going to this one, so much is going to that one. And
prove it.
Prove it, but I don't think that's correct, because
they have to prove it. They have to prove it. If they don't prove it, then of course they are liars, because he who makes a statement must do what? Provide the evidence.
Provide the evidence.
Yeah. If you make a claim, who has to do what? You have to provide the evidence. Where's the evidence on paper that this money has gone to that way? Where is the evidence in any language that's quantifiable, that's definable? Where is the evidence that the name performance, the name on the letter, is actually your property and not somebody else? What the general public must understand is that these people are not acting in the public, they're acting in the private. And once they got you doing things in the private, then they say, well, we've given it over to some public organization, like a public corporate entity, like a corporatocracy called the Australian government, United States government, and so on and so forth. But even those corporatocracies are only corporations, and one corporation can hide its figures from another corporation and its intentions and so on and so forth, because it can also turn out to be a private corporation, and it can be a public limited company corporation, like UK is a UK PLC, which means public limited company, limited to £1.
Yeah, you've had the videos on that where you basically drew the paper trail and you say, this one's connected, this one, it's in the end it's private. So we've seen that video, Mark. Oh, thank you for that. I can share the percentages. I believe the percentages is different.
The ultimate question is, how does a human being put themselves in a position where they are suing them for their God-given ability to perform anything in a correct language? Well, when they come to us, we show them and we do these things, because without that, they are going to be walked into the shadow world of giving up so much of their sweat equity to somebody that they don't even know anything about. So we're not just presenting a problem, we're presenting a solution. The solution is, when you sue them for a correct language and a correct name performance, they seem to walk away. And what I'm saying to the general public is that, why is that? Why is it that they don't want to perform? It's because there are laws and they are petrified of these laws. And that's why they go to so much extent of hiding themselves in because it's profitable for them to spend 99 cents on a dollar that they will collect. Spend 99 cents lying and cheating, because that's it. There's a fee for lying and cheating. When you lie and cheat and you spend 99 cents on a dollar for every dollar you collect, to them that's still a profit, because there's still 200 million people that will still make the contribution. Do you understand what I'm saying? So
yes, I understand.
That's how these people calculate. It's like, well, that's still a profit. That a penny is still a profit. And because I'm doing it like to 3-4 billion people, well, that's a bloody good profit.
That's still a profit. Now, another question for the audience, Mark. Say some of your students and some of people come to us to do this process. One of the questions might be, so what happens to my tax file number or the national insurance number? Does it get closed down? Can I still use it? That's one of the questions.
Well, first of all, if you use a name that doesn't belong to you, or you have not copyrighted it, then you have to pay them for using that name. Since you have never used it, what are you paying them for?
Okay. Yes.
And that's why, and because these people have 1,000,001 solicitors and 1,000,001 lawyers who are all licensed liars, that's what lawyers are, they're licensed to lie. And that's what license means. It means permission to break the law, of which without would be considered illegal.
That makes sense.
That's in the Black's Law Dictionary. Yeah.
Correct. Now, in Australia, we have a system called Pay As You Go, PAYG. In UK and other countries, it's the payroll tax that they take out, withholding from the pays. Now, when people go through this process and come to us, what can you explain a bit how that would happen and things like that? What are the changes, Mark?
When they come to us, first of all, what makes all of these things tick is called a live life claim. If you're not in control of your own birth certificate, that's a certificate of your own live life claim or your live birth claim. That means somebody else is controlling your birth certificate, and your birth certificate is a document for you to go about your business on a commercial level as well, okay? As well as in the private level, as well as on a public level. And if you're not in control of your own certificates and your own issues, then you're not in control of that certificate of birth, and you're not in control of that birth certificate. They're two different designations. One is called, in conventional language, a live birth, and another one is called a certificate of birth. The certificate of birth is written in all capitals, and that designates you, your ability to control your own commas, as long as you're in control of that document with your certificate of live birth. Because if you don't have a certificate of live birth, how can you be in possession of your certificate of certificate of birth that controls the certificate of live birth, and vice versa? So one is a certificate that you was born alive and not a stillborn, because that's what they do, okay? That you was a live birth and you're not a stillborn, and that you have that certificate because that's issued for your behalf. Then if you don't have that, then you don't have control of your birth certificate. And your birth certificate is purely a commercial instrument. It allows you to go about your business, doing your business as a commercial instrument. So one paperwork controls the other. And if you're not in control of both of them, then you are in a trust position. Yeah, they are in a trust position.
Yes,
and that's why these privateers use that bureaucracy to say, well, we're your trustees for your live birth certificate because you don't have it.
Yes.
So we issue them a certificate of live birth. We issue them a live life claim. And that takes them out of the position of having a fiduciary or a trustee put in their position that controls all of these things. Because what they do is as soon as they get it, they reverse the trustee position and make themselves beneficiary. And you, now the executive, in other words, you have to work for their behalf because they're in control of your birth certificate. Do you remember in that document, Committee of 300, they said, our birth certificate was in the Twin Towers until it got blown up.
Yes, I remember that. Oh dear. So that makes sense then. The bureaucracy and the trickery that they play. So switching the roles around.
Yeah, so they do a lot of trickery with the trust position, the Father, Son, Holy Ghost, the executor, the beneficiary, the administrator. In poetic language, it's the 3 days, the 3 Stygian witches. Yeah, and all of these things, what they do is they signify that human beings are in a trust position, and they themselves are not in control of their own trust. And because of this, they are constantly giving out 80% of everything that they make and earn to some unknown entity. Yeah.
Right.
And that's the ratio of a slave and a slave master, the 80-20. They keep 80%, you get 20%. And on the back of that, even though you get a family, you made a house, even all of that, they essentially own, because your children are ward of state, which is horrific in itself. Your bank accounts is not your own bank accounts, because that's you giving the bank an unsecured loan. And that's why they take custody of your own money. That's why they're able to dictate what they're doing, okay? Because they didn't tell you that you was voluntarily giving them the money as an unsecured loan, and they don't need to give it back to you if they don't want to. And one other thing that human beings do need to know all around the world is that what's going to be happening is that the old banknotes are going to be all replaced with their own funny quasi world of crypto. This is not to say that they're going to take the old notes and convert it into crypto. No, they're going to take the old notes, destroy it, and try to issue new notes under the cryptocurrency world. So these cryptocurrency worlds will be their own system, reprinting their own money, but as a digital currency. But they are still nothing more than lies, because by doing that, what they're going to do, they're going to wipe out about 80% of the US dollar's value when they're going to do that. So say, if you had $1 in your bank account, essentially when it turns into cryptocurrency, that's going to lose about 80% of its value. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're not going to have very much choice if you don't put your terms and conditions in to the bank to let them know who and what you are, and they are not in control of your birth certificate, because all the banks are private banks, and private means what? That there are no laws.
No laws, and make it up as they go.
Isn't that the history in the last 120 years, that they've behaved as if there are no laws? In public,
History
there are
tells you
laws.
so
That's
clearly.
why these people have taken so many billions of people out of the public domain and into their private domain. Human beings are not aware that they are walking, talking members of a private society called the
Wow.
Federal Reserve Bank. And that's only one private society. There are so many others.
Wow. So, in conclusion, the benefits that the people that come to do this process is that they would be, they're not tax protesters. They're simply
What does
just
protest? What does a profit means? PRO means no.
no fit,
Test, no fit. Yeah. What
no
does
contract,
protest means? It means no test. PRO means
no
no,
no
and test
contract.
means test. It means we don't protest. We sue them for our God-given right to contribute. And now we want to know, why is it that you don't want to perform for us? Yeah, why don't you want to perform with a correct name and a correct language? Could it be because there are laws? And that's the
Yes.
laws that you are so frightened of? Because a liar, a psychopath, and a narcissist, which is what these people are petrified that one day their lies will come unraveled,
Crumbling down. Yes.
crumbling down. What's the greatest fear of a liar is that their lies would be found out,
Found
that
out,
they are liars.
they cease to exist. They
They
cease
cease
to
to
lie
exist.
anymore. Yeah. Wow.
Because you get to see, it's like, let's imagine that Hugh, Hugh is, we have found out that the general public found out that all this time you've been lying. You've just lost all credibility all over the world.
Oh dear. No, my credibility is too precious, too valuable to lose.
But can you imagine what will be going through the minds of these people when they
Yes.
realize, my God, Mark has done everything he says he's going to do? The Federal Postal Courts are doing everything that they're going to do, saying they're doing. They know that the Federal Postal Courts have been executing project after project in countries after countries. They know who I am, and they know who you are. They know who Alex is. They know who Lance is. They know who Sheko is. And they know who all these people are. And they know who the liars are. And they know who the liars are that have come in our organization trying to destroy it. And they know these are the corporate heads, the heads of state, in the public as well as in the private, that these privateers know that there are actually real laws on this planet, and they are petrified that they will get caught out, because that's the symptoms of a pathological liar. Because a liar lies because they know what the truth is. That's why they lie. That's why they go to so much extent to hide their lies. So it only ends up as a voluntary system. Now, you've known me, first of all as my student, and
Yes.
then as one of my judges. Okay, which is 3.5 years, 3 years, or whatever it is. Okay, and in that brief moment of time, you've come across thousands of my students, and out of those thousands, you have found out a very small percentage tries to destroy the whole. And that's what a liar is. It's a little parasite that lives in a healthy body, constantly hiding that you don't ever find out its existence. Because if you ever did, you would just go like a maggot,
like a pimple.
like a pimple. That's what they are, and they are petrified.
Yes.
Just because, I'd give you another example, and I'm using religion because it's a very good system to understand. The Catholic Church would get you to believe, which is a pernicious organization, would get you to believe that we are born in sin. Why is that? Because it's a pathological liar. If they can get you to believe you are born in sin, then you are always you always need forgiveness. So where people that always ask for forgiveness are always giving things in taxations, in consent to abusers and rapists, for politicians to lie, cheat, murder, steal, for rapists to be called heroes in our society, for pathological liars and psychopaths and narcissists to be praised as war heroes, for fictitious liars and personas like Nelson Mandela, like that half-witted character out of India calling itself Gandhi, like in the US, the Kennedy family, who are nothing more than actors for the Crown Corporation. They are all worshipped as heroes, but they are actually puppets. Human beings are worshipping puppets. And if you can get people to do these things, how easy is it to send a letter through someone's letterbox in an undefined language, which means it's in purely poetry, and get people so frightened about the poetry that they would give up 180, 50, $60,000, pounds, or whatever it is to an organization that gives you no accountability. Without accountability,
Wow.
then you yourself, that the general public themselves, are in direct neglect of the ability to be a citizen. Because
Yeah.
a citizen that does not perform and stop and correct a corporatocracy is not a citizen. And these are all the systems that they use against human beings. A human being that is born thinking that it's full of sin will always be forgiving other people's rape-like behavior, the
It's
lies and
called
cheating.
forbearance, isn't it? It's called forbearance.
Yeah, forbearance. So
Yeah.
if you create enough fear, like the Catholic Church has, that they're going to burn in hell, it'll have what is known as creative power, creative destructive lifespan. And that lifespan will exist generation after generation. So they know that if I get your generation frightened enough, you'll transmit that fear onto your children. And as long as I can keep sending the letters, your children will perform exactly the same way. And before you know it, I've got a whole generation and multitude of generations all captured, performing for me. And the Catholic Church is one of them. Oh, by the way, all religious bodies, the mosques, the synagogues, the churches, the Catholic churches, all of these organizations that always ask you to sacrifice things by killing things, by cutting things away from babies' bodies, by getting you to believe that a man called Jesus crucified himself in agony to save your miserable skin. If anybody believes these things, they are within that jurisdiction of they will always fall for these letters that come through their letterbox. So what I'm doing at this latter part of this conversation is giving the general public the psychological mechanisms that go in play for a private organization that created your governments, like the Washington, D.C., like the Vatican City, like the City of London, to be able to so easily get human beings so frightened that they can take their entire lives away at times.
Wow. This religious rabbit hole is deep, Mark.
These superficial freaks have no ability to go to depth. They operate on what's known as surface material. You have what is known as surface thoughts in neurology. And that surface thought only occupies a very thin layer of a film on the top part of your membrane of your brain. And that's where most of this noise happens of poetry and, shadow puppets and things like that. And that is surface level. Their ability to do it is only on the surface level. Okay. And, like images of dungeons, pirates, they're all part of it's part of a mechanism to be able to try to corrupt your subconscious mind to accept these imageries into your lives, so you can constantly give up your sweat equity. Like we have a certain percentage of what they call dark-skinned students. I have dark-skinned students who believe that they were descended from slaves until they had a lesson with me. And then they understood that they were never slaves. It was all just made up to get them to believe they were slaves, because if you get them to believe they were slaves, they behave like slaves. And how do slaves behave? In a subdued fashion. And a small group will always be fighting back, will always be fighting a phantom. You was never slaves. Yes. You was never slaves.
So the truth is that we are more powerful than what we were meant to, like what we were led to believe.
Yes.
Like, our autonomy, our, our body and our spirit and our soul.
Indeed. So, okay. What I'm saying to you is, how do you rob people of that autonomy? You get them
all the things that you've just mentioned.
all the things that you mentioned.
Okay.
And that's how the fraud works.
I think today we were just talking about the tax office, but I think it went more deeper than that. But no, thank you, Mark, for sharing a lot of that knowledge.
If they need us to sue the various corporations or governments or privateers for our God-given right to contribute, then all they have to do is come to us, and we'll sort that out for them. We'll issue them a live life claim. We'll educate them on how these things work. And then they can sit back and watch that these so-called taxation companies, these so-called debt companies, these mortgage companies don't really want to know. Because Fantastic. They know they've been caught out on a lie. And liars lie. Why? Because they know what the truth is. That's why they lie. And they know there are laws. That's why they lie. Otherwise, they don't need to lie. Otherwise, they can just simply say, give us that money. You owe it to us. Otherwise, we're going to chuck you into prison and chuck you out. No, they don't. They get you to walk through 101 bureaucracies and then say, thank you very much for your contribution. On that note, Hugh, we'll leave it. I hope the general public has understood this, because I've certainly enjoyed doing this presentation.